Welcome to Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of Web3 security, compliance, and risk. Join Michael Pearl as he interviews executives from across the Web3 industry to uncover the challenges and opportunities of this rapidly evolving space. Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cyvers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cyvers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cyvers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that focuses on everything security, compliance, fraud prevention, risk management, basically everything that is interesting in the Web3 space. And today we have a very interesting guest. We have Alexey Tyupanov. He is the CEO of Shift DeFi. Alexey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Great to have you. You know, Alexey, you have a very extensive background. From what I can see, you served as Russia's export credit agency CEO, and you were in senior roles in major banks. And basically, you were coming from the more traditional TradFi space. So please tell us in your own words about yourself, about your background, and eventually what led you to get into the space of Web3 and to basically start Shift.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me and having me over. Well, originally I'm a math guy, so I'm major in math, and only then I went to investment banks, and I had held top position in investment banks, mostly business development, international business. I was the CEO of one of the big institutions in Russia. And then I would say 2018, just few of my fellow members of the university, they were already active in crypto space, developing projects in DeFi, and sort of just got me thinking and looking into it, again, more from the kind of technology perspective rather than from the investment perspective. And this is when then I realized that sort of we're very early, and I still think we're very early in adoption cycle, because sort of I started talking to my ex-colleagues from investment banks and sort of what they think of digital asset space, and no one knew anything. I spoke with a few of big family offices, and it was exactly the same. Like they were like, yeah, we heard something, but we don't really know. And then gradually, but I started gathering a team to kind of see if we can be this bridge between digital asset space and kind of what we call nowadays TradFi, right? With these classic kind of asset managers. And I know how they are thinking from their perspective, what they want to see, right, from the asset class, and to be able to invest into it. And this is how we kind of started putting products around it. And gradually, sort of, I realized that to be a classic portfolio manager, meaning, okay, let's buy some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, some Solana, etc. I was very honest with myself. I was like, okay, here we don't have a competitive edge. Sooner or later, big names like, I don't know, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgans and such, ultimately will come into this business. They have thousands of people, analysts, quants. Like at some point, you will not have a competitive edge. Like, yes, you can be the first in the industry, but then with the adoption, you're gonna be it's gonna be very difficult to compete. So we kind of thought of it that way, that if you look at the asset management, right, the largest market in the world is fixed income by market cap. I mean, put here bank deposit, bonds, money market funds, etc. It's by far most liquid market than stocks, commodities, or digital assets. Why? Well, because when people have money, first thing they think about is, okay, I want to put it somewhere safe, and I want to have some yield on top of it, right? Before people start thinking, okay, I will open up business, or I will buy a stock, or I will buy gold, or I will buy some derivatives. First thing they think, okay, I'll put it on a bank deposit, or I'll buy a bond, something very kind of simple.
It's the default, essentially.
Exactly. It's like our natural kind of way of thinking as human beings. And this is when we thought, okay, well then let's focus on that group of people. Let's focus on people who will come to the digital space. And when the adoption comes, they will not first think, okay, I want to buy a meme coin. They will first think, okay, I want to park my liquidity somewhere safe and I want to get some yield on it. So this is why we started looking into DeFi, and we got a small friends and family kind of small family office, and we started basically investing in DeFi. And by investing in DeFi, I mean we started providing liquidity to DeFi protocols. And this is when we realized that at that point of time, and it was like 4 years ago, and I think still the industry didn't have lots of solutions that are very necessary for kind of institutional approach into providing liquidity in DeFi. And the reason why we know it, because we thought of ourselves as a family office and investment kind of vehicle. So we went and we looked in the market and we're like, okay, are there rating agencies? No. Is there anyone who can do kind of monitor the portfolio and outsource it? No. Like, okay. The problem is that even if you use good custody providers, once you send funds into a DeFi protocol, your wallet shows zero balance, right? So then you're like, okay, is there a classic ERP system? Can I use SAP or Oracle to build my back office? No, right? So essentially, we had to build it all on our own. And this is how we've built Shift. So we're a licensed asset manager, and we work with family offices, corporate treasuries, high net worth individuals. But sort of then when
Were
we've
you
built,
licensed? Which jurisdiction?
so we were licensed in Cayman, and now we're moving our operations to ADGM.
Mhm.
We're very close to finalizing the setup. They asked me not to disclose it, so I will say that I didn't disclose it. So we're moving now, moving to ADGM. It took us some time to do it, but anyway, we're at the end of the process.
Yeah.
And
For the listeners that are not familiar, ADGM is basically the Abu Dhabi regulator. The
Abu Dhabi
UAE has
Global
several regulators.
Yeah, it's Abu Dhabi Global Markets. We can speak about regulations separately because we did kind of analysis with the lawyers looking at different jurisdictions. And there's a certain reason why we even moved away from Caymans, but I can speak about it later. So this is Shift, and this is a licensed entity. And later on, I'll tell more how we built it and what we have inside. And then we basically thought, okay, if the adoption is going to come, right, we need to be able to provide this service for everyone, not just for institutional clients, but for retail. And this is why we started building Shift DeFi, and we're launching in the next couple of months. It's basically a decentralized platform where you can connect your wallet and you will get the same approach and the same kind of service that we provide for institutional clients.
And who are your clients right now? What is the main segment? If you can, let's say, identify kind of the typical client base, what would it be?
Well, the typical client base is as I said, is either family offices or corporate treasuries. It's basically a client that has stable coins. They use these stable coins as sometimes for mm, as a storage. Sometimes it's means of payment. Sometimes it's just liquidity that's going to be later used for investments. And they're looking for exactly for safe it can be, safe yield on top of it. Some of them think of it even like as short-term overnight rate. They keep it sometimes with us for several days and then they invest it elsewhere, then they bring it back. So it's because it's almost instant liquidity, essentially.
I see. And in terms of your investment thesis, how do you operate? Which venues do you trade on? What type of assets do you purchase? How do you basically produce the yield?
So we are involved only in providing liquidity to DeFi protocols. So we don't trade. So our business is curating a portfolio of DeFi protocols, doing a risk assessment, then curating a portfolio, monitoring it, and we developed our internal proprietary system for doing it. And basically, this is where we generate where we.
I'm curious. I've been in crypto since 2013, and I saw all the boom and bust of the ICO era, and then you had the crypto winter, and then we had another wave and another wave. Recently, about a couple of years ago, the last wave was highly focused on DeFi, and DeFi was king basically. You could see some amazing yield, and people who were obviously savvy and knew how to play the system and how to go across different chains and how to do staking and restaking and so on could get to crazy yield that speaking of TradFi you could never see in TradFi, not in a million years. Since then the winter came and now there's a new cycle in town. I'm curious, how do you view the current DeFi landscape? Because some say that it's more mature. So you can see perhaps a lower yield, but also the risk has gone down significantly. What's your take on it?
Okay, now let's start with the risk. Okay, if you think of DeFi as, let's say, a quasi fixed income, right? Because this is what you essentially are trying to do, because you're trying to provide a product which is market neutral and provide some yield on top of it. The risks in DeFi are very different from classic credit risk, right? So if, let's say, I bought a bond of a company, right? I bear credit risk and I get remunerated in return for carrying this risk. Let's leave aside the market risk that the price of the bond fluctuates. Let's assume I just put some money on the bank deposit above the insured level. So the credit risk, how would I there's classic methods how to assess it, right? You take financial statements, you build a financial model, a projection, and then you see if the company is able to repay the debt or not. Plus, on top of that, you have rating agencies, which more or less did this work for you, right? That you sometimes don't need to do your own research. You look at the ratings from, I don't know, S&P, Moody's, etc., and you somehow already assess the credit risk that you're taking in your portfolio and how much you get remunerated for it. Now, risks in DeFi are completely different. There's no credit risk. There's no entity that I gave funds into, and then I get sort of quarterly financial report. I can build a financial model, etc., etc. So the risks basically fall in two parts, right? One is economic risk. So there's a piece of code which embeds some math idea, how to calculate liquidity in the pool, balance it, how to reward it, etc., how to make sure that no one stays with bad debt, etc., etc. So there's some math involved, right? And we call it economic side. Then another part is pure technical, right? It's quality of the code. And you may think that sort of tech auditors already did this part of the job, but we very well know that it's just the rule of the game that exploits. The reality is that exploits come not only from the outsiders, sometimes they come from inside the team. And I don't necessarily mean that inside the team as like a rug pull and the team did some malicious actions. Sometimes it's a matter of operational risks inside the team. So if you look at latest hacks, I don't know, Bybit, nowadays hackers are no longer kind of using just brute force. They're doing social engineering, right? I don't know. Someone from your team who has a piece of the multi-sig likes, I don't know, Ferraris, and now he receives an email from Ferrari shop, opens it, and then, whatever happens. So the type of the risk in DeFi is completely different. And if, for example, economic risk has become more mature because it's been battle tested, look at the crash of FTX and look at the crash on Friday, right? Major DeFi platforms, their math side worked really well, right? No one all the liquidations worked, all the economic side worked really well, no one stayed with bad debt. So all the big names worked really well. So the math side is...
If I may, another example would probably be Terra Luna, where if you compare it to the math right now with with the existing protocols and especially stable coins, you see that it's totally different. You see the maturity that the industry have gone through.
Exactly. So I think the math side is definitely has become more mature and battle tested. It's a fact, right? Now, on the tech side, I would say that battle-tested names remained battle-tested. I don't know, Uniswap, Aave, etc. There's some players that came into the market and they have quite good quality of the code. But what we see as a general problem, and I'm talking now from the perspective of the liquidity provider, right? I'm not trying to say that some of the protocols are bad, right? I'm looking from the person who wants to understand the risk he's taking when providing liquidity, right? One of the major issues that we see across the board is the, let's call it, centralization issue, right? Whatever many protocols say that they're decentralized, in a lot of them, there's ultimately or a multi-sig that can access the liquidity of liquidity providers, of LPs, or has access to changes to the ecosystem of smart contracts, to not necessarily to all, but to critical functions. And we know from all the exploits that happened in since the beginning of DeFi, if you look at them and if you analyze them, what we did on our side when we were building rating model, there's certain critical functions that can be changed, and these change in critical functions can be used then to steal the funds, essentially. Now, think of it from my perspective, right? I looked at math. The math is good. I looked at the quality of the code. It's good. It's been audited by a few respected auditors. And then I see that ultimately the way it works is that the team can change whatever they want. I don't know, even not even whatever they want. Let's say they can change the oracle. It's chain link, but then they can change to whatever they want. And through that, there can be a price manipulation, and then the liquidity can be stolen. Now, it means that I'm taking a risk of unknown people. Let's assume even they are known. Maybe they're published on the webpage, right? But I'm basically taking a risk of a human factor, of group of people. I'm not necessarily saying that they can be bad actors, but SBF used to be a messiah in our industry, and we know how it all ended up, right? So human factor is still a human factor. But on top of
Yeah,
that,
and,
I'm
and
thinking,
plus, if I may, people also make mistakes, right? So you can have the
exactly,
best intentions,
exactly,
and eventually, and by the way, it's not only one person, right? As you said, oftentimes what we call, let's say, an internal job, it can rely on some analyst that had access to the system, and the rest is history.
exactly. So exactly. So this is what we call sort of their internal operational risk, right? They might not necessarily be the group of bad actors that decided to together to scam everyone, but because they had some mistakes in internal checks and controls, sort of it happened, right? Plus, it's another possible vector of exploit by malicious actors from the outside. And the problem here is that from my perspective as liquidity provider, I can't quantify this risk. I can't kind of measure it. I can't measure the probability of it happening. So this what, for example, in our internal rating model, this factor downgrades those DeFi protocols substantially. Now, this part didn't change much. It used to be the same at the beginning, and it's still the same nowadays. Most of the projects that are coming into the market, they all keep this design with the team having access to critical functions. And we try to approach those teams sometimes, and we tell them, listen, guys, we would be in sort of, we're not telling them that they did something wrong, but we're telling them, listen, from our risk assessment perspective, we would be able to provide more liquidity for you if you, for example, change it and you leave yourself just non-critical functions under control. I don't know. I don't care about how much fees you charge or etc. Or put critical functions if you still sort of keep it because you want to make sure that you still have control if something bad happens. Put it on the time log, right? Make it kind of fair for everyone so that we have time also to react if something kind of goes wrong. So answering your question, I think the math side is for sure has become battle tested, especially in big names. Even in newer ones now, the crash on the Friday tested everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
But sort of the tech design side is, I would say, it's still the same. It's still the same. The OGs did it the right way and it works the right way. Now the new protocols, they still have this design embedded, but again, it's also a choice by the team, right? I'm not trying, so I don't want to sound like ones are good, others are bad. I'm just
Yeah.
telling
Yeah.
this more from the perspective of someone who will provide liquidity into the protocol.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have to understand that in almost all cases, at the end of the day, the leaders and the founders of those platforms, what they care about, and as they should, right? They care about essentially bringing more value to their investors, so to speak, right? To bring more fees and to feed the machine and essentially be successful and profitable, right? So security and operational risk is not the first thing that they think of. It should be maybe the fifth, right? But it's not the first thing that they think of. And then when you propose something of that sort, they start calculating, okay, I have to shut down the system. I have to lose trust because then I expose myself to people understand that I'm not as decentralized as I say I am, and then maybe I'll have to internalize some of the losses and so on, and then they say, you know what, let's leave it there, right? And that's one of the biggest problems. Also, another issue that I see quite often is, even if you have the incentive to make some changes, at the end of the day, smart contracts are immutable. So what do you do now? You have a certain amount of TVL locked in a smart contract. Do you create a new version and then people have to adapt to it? You have to migrate the funds there. It's a huge headache. So
Yeah.
oftentimes the leaders of those protocols, they decide to leave it there. And there where where trouble comes, because that's when basically when smart contracts exist for a very long time, hackers start to learn the
Yeah, yeah.
ins and outs and the weak links, and there the basically is where trouble comes.
Again, I just don't want to sound like as if I'm bad mouthing some of the approaches. No, it's you're right. It's a choice. It's really a choice as a balance between kind of what the team is looking for. I agree with you.
Yeah. But I think I totally agree with you that not much has changed in terms of the policy of the protocols. Having said that, and here, full disclosure, Cybers and Shift works together, and we're helping you, providing you with information, with alerts, with monitoring of the protocols that you're investing in. Now you have a capability of actually knowing what's going on in those protocols and getting heads up if something goes wrong. So maybe you can take us into the behind the scenes of that, and how is it of value to you in terms of your risk management?
Sure. Let me then a bit start from the beginning before risk management before, because then it's kind of all puzzles into the in one picture. So the way we think about it is that, and that was actually our journey also at the beginning. So let's assume you have some stable coins. You're like, okay, I want to earn some yield, so I'll send it to like some DeFi protocols, right? Well, first of all, you need to do some research. The reality is that, I mean, we all like to write in Twitter, do your own research. The reality
Hmm.
is that it's impossible, right? You as a one single being, a human being, you need a lot of time to do this research, right? Not, let's say, even if you have all the skills to do it, you still need time to go on chain, understand all the smart contracts, etc., etc., etc. So we're like, okay, well, let's solve this pain, right? And let's try to make it kind of intuitive for the market. So as first for ourselves and then for the market. So this is how we did our rating model, right? And as I said, because and we kind of try to play with the same names as Standard and Poor's, right? So like all the lowest risk protocols are AAA rated, then lower grade is like AA, triple B, etc., etc. So we've kind of mapped the whole industry into these rating categories. And actually it's really the whole industry, because we are in the business of constantly monitoring the market for new DeFi protocols where we can kind of get the most yield, right?
Hmm.
So this is why we know everything that is happening across all the chains in DeFi. Okay, a disclaimer, we're not looking at like very small chains, because we also need certain liquidity. Plus, we're very careful with new chains, especially when their libraries are not battle tested,
Hmm.
because this is also a risk we cannot assess. We don't have infrastructure then to analyze if the libraries of the blockchain are written correctly, right? If they don't have any possible exploits, I mean, we just don't have resources for it. So we're very careful with new chains, but still we do it cross chain, right? So we look everywhere. So we really mapped out all the DeFi space. Now, how would you build a rating model, right? The way, as I said, because you have economic risk and technical risk, the way you did it, okay, economic risk is just our internal kind of assessment. And then how would you do the technical risk? Well, you go back and you analyze all the exploits that happened, and you try to understand, sort of try to map them and group them and understand how you can then in future see that if a DeFi protocol has certain patterns in design, then we know that it's been same patterns could be exploited in a certain way, right? So this is how we built our rating model. And then every hack, every exploit, every rug pull that happens in the market feeds into this rating model, and we analyze, do we learn something new from this rug pull or exploit? Does anything has to be changed in our rating mode? So this is on the kind of on the research side. Okay, let's assume you did the research and then you're like, okay, well, with whatever research you did, still there can be loopholes. So it's better to have some sort of diversification in your portfolio. So you don't put all your funds in one basket. The rule of thumb we use is that we don't put more than 5% of capital in a single name. We have limits per name, per asset, per blockchain, etc., etc. But let's assume rule of thumb, let's even say 10%. So now you have a portfolio of 10 DeFi protocols where you need to send your funds. There comes the execution part. You have to basically go to 10 web pages, connect your wallet, send your funds, right? It creates first risks that you can be part of the phishing attack, or you just mistype something in the web page address, or like what will happen, I think, with Curve when someone stole their address. So there's a lot of problems that can happen there as well. But
Yeah,
even
or
operational,
just yeah, just to give another example with the LiFi attack, where basically the attacker drained the wallets that were connected to the protocol, and that's
exactly,
obviously another systemic risk.
yeah. So in reality, to sort of take away this operational risk, you need to do it only directly through your wallet through smart contracts. That means that you need to know how to write those smart contracts, how to do it on chain, etc. Okay, let's assume you even sort of did all of this, right? So we do everything through our system of smart contracts. We never use web page front ends of any of the protocols. Um, but then, okay, let's assume you even did that. You sent funds, and then even if you use great custody, centralized or MPC, or you use any wallet, you look in your wallet, the balance is zero, right? So none of the wallets will show you actually where your funds are. Maybe you will go on debunk. Unfortunately, not always it shows everything correctly, especially if you used a bit more complicated strategy, if you did some leveraging. So essentially, you will have to have like a separate Excel file where you keep all the data, where you've sent your funds. Then you need to harvest the incentives. Then you need to sell them, calculate the yield, right? And this is just the execution part for you. Now comes the monitoring. Okay, you have the portfolio. In the classic financial sort of in TradFi, what would you do? Well, first of all, markets are open from 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, depending on your jurisdiction. But anyways, and then you get quarterly reports, right? That's your monitoring windows of your portfolio. Now, in our industry, it works 24/7, block by block, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you need in monitoring? Well, simple stuff. Let's assume even the protocol is done really well, and for example, any changes can be done through DAO. You need to monitor everything that is happening with DAO, right? These voting, approvals, etc., etc. Many projects don't need DAO approvals and they can change some settings themselves. So you need to monitor this. Plus, you need to sometimes monitor liquidity if someone came, took out more than you would like to. So you need to take your funds out. In reality, it's absolutely impossible. So your portfolio becomes kind of at the mercy of the market, that
Mm-hmm.
nothing bad kind of happens to it. And you're just kind of hoping that everything is going to be fine, because operationally, it's impossible to monitor it for a person. So how would you sort of, but on the other hand, if you think about it, blockchain gives this great tool of monitoring your liquidity block by block, right? It's like as if you can send a guy to a company where you bought a bond, right? And the guy is sitting
Mm-hmm.
inside, I don't know, financial department and tells you about every payment that is going in and out of the company, right? So
Yeah.
it has this beauty that you need to use to your advantage. So what we did is for each protocol, we created a sort of a system of criterias, right? That we monitor block by block. Most of this part is now sort of thanks to partnership to you is operationally outsourced to you, and I think it's a great tool. And I think, to be honest with you, everyone without even using our solutions should definitely use solutions like yours, because this is what blockchain actually gives you as a resource, as a tool, right? You can actually block by block see everything that is happening. And then if you see in the moment that this is what we do, at least with us, when we see any type of kind of alert coming from your system or from our internal system, because we monitor some
Mm-hmm.
stuff separately, we're the first to withdraw liquidity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we try to front run transactions. If we see that they will damage, let's say, the liquidity really bad, then you withdraw. Now, another topic for kind of future development, and I think it's kind of topic in general for EVM based chains and guys like you and us is, can we develop a system that will front run malicious transactions? Can we build a system that will look into a mempool and we see somehow the transaction that appeared there, we can very quickly analyze and understand that something bad is going to happen. It can be anything, but let's call it bad.
Yeah.
And you try to front run the transaction in the block. Technically seems to be possible, but it needs kind of investments and analysis and development. We as investment guys, we don't have really resources for it. But it's something to think about, right? Because this is what can give you more kind of comfort, right? In being in this industry in general. So this monitoring part is extremely important, and this is what we built with you also, guys, that basically if we see that something bad is happening, we want to be the first to withdraw the funds, and we do it automatically, right? So you don't have to have a guy who is 24/7 looking at the computer and trying to analyze what is happening.
Yeah,
And then
especially given the fact that those things usually happen, on a Saturday night in the middle of
of
the
course,
night.
of course,
It's never during working hours, it's
of course.
always at the worst time possible.
And the last part is reporting. So basically, we had to build our internal ERP system where one part is that all our investment process is inside the system, our smart contracts, how we develop them, checks, and this is what important for institutional people, like that our business processes are all automated. They're all put on paper. There's cross checks. There are 4i, 6i principle everywhere, etc., right? Like classic investment, kind of like these thick papers of manuals and stuff, right? And easy and comfortable reporting, right? So that we see always where our funds are, in what DeFi protocols, how much yield we're getting, what are the risks, what are the ratings, if we need to reshuffle the portfolio, if on the risk adjusted basis we're doing well, or we should do something with our portfolio. So this is how our journey was that for each of these pieces, we actually went to the market to look for a solution. So we went to look for ratings. They didn't exist, so we had to do it ourselves. We went at first to monitoring. There was nothing, so we had to do it ourselves. Then we got to know you guys, and we partnered and did something together. The reporting side doesn't exist at all still in the market, and this is something I think in future will come. I think we need guys like SAP and Oracle for ERP systems in crypto in general. Nowadays, there's nothing like that. So we've built it ourselves as well internally. And this is sort of our Shift platform as what we do for our institutional clients. And then we kind of thought to ourselves, okay, well, if everyone is saying, and we believe in it as well, if now even TradFi started saying, listen, the market cap of stable coins is going to reach 2, 3, 4 trillions, whatever they give all the different numbers. But anyway, TradFi also kind of accepted the fact that, yes, people will start using stable coins, right? Not only credit cards, but actually move into digital space. And then we thought, okay, well, then we need to make all that we've built accessible for everyone, right? So basically, we're building and finalizing. It's a decentralized platform. You connect your wallet. And we've built it from the design perspective the way we would like to see it if we were the liquidity providers, right? So our multi-sig doesn't have any access to the liquidity and any access to the critical functions. So with all the functions that we have access to, and they're very limited, is only on time lock. And you connect your wallet, it goes cross-chain into the portfolio that we curated. It auto-harvests all the incentives, it sells all the incentives. So you actually see your yield, not in points, not in comp tokens, not in uni tokens. You actually see it in your stable coins, right? Because it's also actually one of the problems in newcomers to the market is that nowadays everyone started launching this points program, and then you can't even measure what is your yield is, right? It's like kind of a promise and future that's something you will be able to sell. So anyway, but it's a separate discussion. So it invests your funds in a curated portfolio cross-chain, harvests automatically, sells automatically, so you see your yield, and it is connected to our monitoring system. So that's the only black box that is in this whole ecosystem. But you can verify very simply on chain that this has only one function: to withdraw liquidity from DeFi back into your wallet. Nowhere else. Very simple, AK-47 kind of reliable stuff. And so you're connected to your portfolio is connected to the same monitoring system that we use for institutional funds, right? And you have a very nice, very intuitive reporting page where you can see where your funds are, what DeFi strategies used, how much yield it's generating, what are the risk rating, etc., etc. So we kind of thought that if we want people to come to our industry, you need to make DeFi easy and safe. Otherwise, with the current level of user experience and with current level of kind of research that you have to do and monitoring that you have to do yourself, it's impossible. There's no way our grandparents will move from banks to stable coins, right? Like there's absolutely no way until we solve these
Yeah.
pains. And this is what we are kind of trying to do, because also, interesting analysis, and this is another part which I don't understand why the industry doesn't do. Blockchain allows to do a lot of marketing insights. By marketing, I don't mean campaigns in Twitter and stuff, right? But marketing when you actually analyze who is your client, what is your average check, etc., right?
Hmm.
So we kind of we look not at our competitors, but we look at major DeFi names and lower DeFi names. Like, what is the composition of their TVL? Who is their client, right? So it's
Hmm.
actually interesting findings. They don't influence our business, but still it's interesting finding. If you look, let's take Aave, right? The largest ones. 80% of TVL is comprised by wallets that provided more than $100,000. So only 20% of TVL is provided by lesser checks. Most of the TVL are checks higher than $100,000. That's one
Yeah.
thing. Second, the peak of previous bull market, when everyone was on hype and everyone was doing everything. I mean, even your neighbors were talking about crypto, like everyone was talking about crypto.
Yeah.
Total number of such wallets on Aave was around 8,000 only. So we're
Hmm.
not talking about like millions or even, even 100,000. Actually, we did this analysis to understand if we need to take into account kind of infrastructure load into account for our platform. I mean,
Hmm.
what if like there are millions of transactions coming every second, and then you would need to think what to do about it? No, it's basically at the top of the market. It's like 8,000 wallets that represent 80% of TVL. So it means
So
we're
essentially, if I understand correctly, there's some sort of a consolidation where you have bigger players or liquidity providers that team together rather than just small time,
I
regular
think
average
no,
Joe provider.
to be honest with you, I think the reality is that we're very, very early. I
Hmm.
think if you look in general at the number of wallets that provide liquidity in DeFi, we're very, very early. Like we're comparing to any other industry, we're nowhere. Like we're just a small dot comparing to other industries. So, and it's actually a very good sign. It means we're still very early, because in our industry, when you kind of always work inside it, you start thinking, okay, we're late, everything's been done, etc., etc. But actually,
Yeah.
when you walk outside our bubble, out there people don't know anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
and
that
this is
means that
why,
the potential is huge, right?
yeah,
Because if only a small segment of people are involved, then the potential is obviously all the rest.
yeah. But for this, we need to make DeFi safe, and this is what we are trying to work on, and to make user experience nicer than it is kind of now, right? So you need to solve all those pains. So this is what we're trying to do with Shift DeFi and with your help, guys.
Yeah.
The reason why I told this story about 8,000 wallets, right, is that I think we as industry, for the time being, people are all trying to compete for the same pool of liquidity, for the same pool of clients. we need to think a bit differently. We need to bring these TradFi, these our mothers, grandmothers, etc., like the people from usual life, and these capital we need to be able to bring inside our industry. Just competing between ourselves for the same pool of liquidity doesn't make a lot of sense. And for that, we all need to work together on improving the experience with our industry. And I think that's great when platforms cooperate and with each other, when different providers cooperate with each other on trying to actually solve these pains of people who are coming to our industry.
Yeah,
So
I
thanks
totally
for
agree. I totally agree. And I think that it all boils down to trust. Because whenever you
absolutely,
read the news and the only thing that you hear about crypto is fraud and scams and hacks, it doesn't incentivize the moms and pops to actually invest their funds in crypto.
of course, of course.
On that note, we're almost out of time. But Alexei, I want to thank you. It was really fascinating to go into the nitty gritty of
Yeah,
liquidity providing, especially these days when, as you said, DeFi has become more mature, and hearing, how Shift operates and the amount of thought that went into that and the amount of sophistication, I see that through players like Shift, the industry indeed matures and is becoming
thank you,
safer and more user friendly. So kudos to you on the good work. And
thank you,
thank you so much. And we
thank
would
you,
love to have you again. Thank you.
thank you very much. It would be great. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cyvers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cyvers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cyvers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.